Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's webinar on how to use podcasts as a sales and marketing tool. I'm Peter Talion, the workshop coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County, and I will be your host. Our speaker today is Merrill Loechner. More on our speaker in just a moment. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and Monroe Library, and we are delighted to have Beth Stoller on the call with us. And Beth, why don't you say a few words, please?
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everybody. On behalf of the Monroe Chamber, the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library, and SCORE, I'd like to welcome you to today's Lunch and Learn, or just learn. For over 8 years, we three organizations have come together to bring you great business-driven topics to help you learn and grow as business professionals. If there's a topic you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me at info@monroectchamber.com so that we can get it on and take care of it for you. So I know that you're in for a great webinar today. Merrill's been doing this presentation for many years, and every time I hear it, I learn something new. So the last time I heard it was 2020, and I'm really excited to hear what new tips she's got. Before I close, I want to remind you that we do meet in person as well. On April 28th at the Monroe Library, we will have attorney Russell Sweeting. He's of counsel for Black & Decker, and he's going to be talking about Connecticut employment law for small businesses. On Thursday, May 15th, we will have business coach and consultant Dan Furta. He's going to be talking about profit acceleration strategies to maximize your bottom line. And on Wednesday, June 11th, we have Danielle Marin Lopez, and she's going to be talking about tips for generating organic visits to your Google business profile. So we've got a great lineup of speakers coming for the next couple of months. Please make sure you join us at the library and keep on the Monroe Chamber website for all of these. Now I'm going to turn it back over because I really am excited to hear what Merrill has to say. Thank you, Peter. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Beth. We appreciate your comments and your sponsorship. First, some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a national organization with 10,000 volunteers with 230 offices. We are the Small Business Administration Resource Partner. In Fairfield County, SCORE has approximately 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer 3 primary value-added services to small business owners: free one-on-one counseling via telephone, email, video, and face-to-face, which can be accessed via the Request Mentor link on our website or via the link on the screen. Number 2, educational in-person workshops and live webinars like the one you are listening to today, about 100 per year. Extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal, and on-demand webinars. Some information about today's event. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We will collect the questions and ask Merrill the questions at the end. I will moderate that. It is located in the lower part of your screen. Our workshop will end at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be available at our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, within the next couple of days. Now I'm delighted to introduce our speaker. A natural-born storyteller, Merrill Loechner spent the majority of her career in B2B marketing. She has worked primarily in fields where jargon was a problem: science, engineering, technology, and law. Those positions have taught her how to translate complex ideas into engaging stories that customers, investors, and the press could understand and embrace. As a corporate commuter, Merrill listened to hours of podcasts every week. She quickly realized that podcasts offered an incredible format for businesses to take the time they needed to tell their stories in depth. She then reached out to her local Chamber of Commerce to suggest a startup podcast for their members. Great idea, they said, go start one. And that was her first podcast. Since then, Merrill has been producing podcasts for multiple clients in the business community. In 2017, Merrill stepped away from the corporate world to start her own agency, bringing her storytelling and podcast expertise to smaller businesses, organizations, and nonprofits that struggle to find the best ways to reach their audiences. It's now my great pleasure to turn it over to Merrill Merrill, please go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Peter. And had I known you were going to give me such a great intro, I would skip over this part, which you just pretty much did. So we can get straight to the agenda, and that will save some more time for Q&A. So what we're going over today is everyone knows podcasts, audio, video. And when I talk about podcasts today, it will be both audio and video podcasts. So we're going to be talking today on who listens and watches podcasts and how to advertise on a podcast, how to sponsor a podcast, how to be a guest on other people's podcast, producing your own podcast, 5 ways that you can use podcasts as a sales and marketing tool, and then we'll do some Q&A. So to start up, who and how? Who are listening to podcasts? Who are listening to the audio podcast now? It's pretty much an equal mix on gender. Not surprisingly, it skews youngish, as most technical things do, but even my 88-year-old mom listens to podcasts. Who are watching podcasts? Gender, again, is pretty much equal, and age is pretty much the same. Again, my mom watches a lot of YouTube as well. Now, how do people listen? Not surprisingly, most people listen on their phones. That's kind of how I started listening to podcasts. I had my phone attached to my car. And again, I had an hour and a half commute each way. So I would just listen to 14 hours of podcasts every week. A lot of people listen to them on their computer. And if you have smart speakers, if you have Alexa or Siri or Echo, a lot of people listen that way. Again, watching podcasts, not surprisingly, on their phone because that's what the younger generation do. I am one of the people who, the 12% who tend to watch on my computer, but then again, I tend to live in front of my laptop. But a lot of people also stream these videos onto smart TVs. They look at it on their tablet and even game consoles. So people ask me a lot, is there a big directory where I can find all the podcasts? And yeah, it's called Google because there's too many new podcasts, audio and video, coming every day for there be to any one place to find them. So say if you're looking to say, I'm a lawyer, are there any podcasts out there for lawyers? Yeah, there's a lot of them. But say you want to narrow it down a little bit and say, there are podcasts for divorce lawyers. There are a lot of those too. So if you're looking for specific topics, the best way is to just plug it into Google and see what you can find. Okay, so you're a business, you're trying to generate some income, generate some interest. Let's try some advertising on a podcast. If you already do radio ads or TV ads, you can use those for audio video podcasts, or you can create something new. You can place an ad on a single podcast by contacting the show's producer. Again, that's one of the things that you can't really just do an ad one time in one place and expect to get any interest on it. So what you're going to want to do is put an ad on multiple podcasts through a network. There's for audio, there's iHeartRadio. For YouTube, there's YouTube ads. And what these networks can do is called dynamic ad insertion. So similar to social media, you tell them the market you're looking for. Say you sell sports equipment and you want to reach out to, okay, I want to hit men between 15 to 55 who are interested in hockey and may be interested in buying my equipment. The networks can actually do that. And what cool thing they can do is they can also target regional markets. If you own a sporting goods store, say in Stamford, and you say, okay, I want to hit these hockey lovers, but they have to be within 50 miles of my zip code. They can actually do that. So anyone listening to a sports podcast, if they live in that area, will get your ad. So it's a very good way to really target down the people you're trying to reach. Average cost is what's called PPM, cost per thousand. And it's not that expensive. But again, the more subscribers a podcast has, the more it's going to cost. So you may want to look for ones that are local and ones that haven't quite really expanded yet. Start small, work up. Another way to do this is to actually sponsor the podcast. Now, you can do this directly with the podcast producer. This is rarely handled by networks. And you can sponsor a single episode, or you can do a series, or you can sponsor the entire podcast. One hockey podcast I listened to for the first 3 years of its existence was sponsored by a local pizza parlor in Toronto. So if I ever visit Toronto, I know to check out Panago Pizza. If the podcast you want to sponsor is done by a nonprofit, you may be able to write off the expense. One of the podcasts I produce is for a nonprofit up in New Hampshire, and the entire cost of their podcast is picked up by a local insurance company that is sponsoring the entire thing. When you sponsor a podcast, your company name and tagline will be mentioned in the beginning at the end. Thank you for listening to this podcast today, sponsored by Acme Sporting Goods. And they'll do that at the end too. And your contact information will be on screen in the show notes and everything else. They can also do a read. Today's episode is sponsored by Acme Hockey Stores. Visit their store in Stanford and blah, blah. Whatever script you write, the host will read. Again, this really depends on the hosts. Sometimes you can see them just sitting there reading, hello, today our sponsor is blah, 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 blah. Sometimes you have a really good, engaging sponsor who'll get excited about it. Those are usually the best kind of podcast to sponsor. If you sell a thing, usually you send that thing to the podcast host so they can actually be enthusiastic about it. I listened to a bunch of hockey podcasts because I am a hockey nerd. And in January, I'm pretty sure the same mattress company sent the same mattress to about 40 different podcasts because all of them were saying what a great night's sleep they had. So that's another way you can host. Cost also dramatically depends again on the size of the podcast, how popular it is. If you're trying to get on This American Life, that's got 10 million subscribers. So that will be a little more expensive than, the local guy doing a podcast out of his kitchen. But that small podcast could be just as effective. Merrill, you cry. My marketing budget is 5 nickels and some pocket lint. I can't afford any of this. Well, one of the things you can do is being a guest on other people's podcasts. A passive way to do that is simply to register on a speaker network like Podcast Guest, Podmatch. There is dozens of them. Some charge, most don't, but it's a way for people looking for speakers to be able to find you. You can also just simply on your LinkedIn profile or your Facebook say, I'm a podcast guest expert. I would love to be a guest on your podcast. I know as a business podcaster, when we're looking for speakers, we always search our way through LinkedIn. If you want a little bit more active about it, you're going to go back to Google and look for podcasts that have guests. Most people think all podcasts, all videos have guests. Not all do. That reach your target audience. Who are you trying to reach and what do you want to say to them? And more importantly, or about a topic you know. You're not going to be going on a hockey podcast if you're like, I'm a leadership coach. I know nothing about sports. Yeah, don't waste the producer's time. So once you find a podcast that you think you're going to be a good fit to, you're going to reach out with a pitch on why you're going to make a great guest. Now, they don't want to hear your sales pitch. No one listens to a podcast to be sold to. They listen or watch a podcast because they want to be entertained and they want to be educated. So you have to explain how you're going to educate the subscribers of that person's podcast. And again, be realistic. Smaller podcasts are always hungrier looking for guests as opposed to the multi-million-dollar subscriber ones. So look for the smaller ones. And especially if you're just starting, because one of the first things a podcast producer will do is, have you ever done this before? So the smaller podcasts don't really care. So it's a good training wheels to get better at doing this. If you've got the money, you can do a booking firm or a PR agency. There's a lot of PR agencies that will do this now, and they should be able to get you on the bigger podcasts. What you're also going to need is what's called a one sheet, a speaker sheet, if for those of you who do talks, or a media kit. It's simply a one-page PDF that says, this is who I am, this is my bio, this is what I speak about. These are conversation starters and questions you can ask. If you've done podcasts before, if you've been on a guest, you could put links there. You can put testimonials. Wow, best speaker we ever had, and your contact info. This will let people know that you know what you're doing, and you're not just saying, hey, I have a heartbeat. Let me be on your podcast. Again, you want to show the world that you are an expert in your field. So this is a great way to let the podcast producers know that. Okay, congratulations. Yes, we want you on our podcast. Now what? You may be asked to come to a studio. If this is something that they do live or they have a recording studio, you may need to go there. A lot of them now are virtual, so you can Zoom in. There's other software, and I'll talk about that. So you can either do this live or at home through your computer. First thing to find out, is this podcast live or pre-recorded? Especially if this is something that you've never done before, you may want to do pre-recorded. I mean, with my podcasts, they're all pre-recorded, so I can go in and edit out the filler words, the ums, the likes, the you knows. You can't do that when you're live. So if you're an accomplished public speaker, don't be afraid to go live. If this is something you're a little nervous about, stick to the pre-recorded podcasts. Do not script anything out. You are supposed to be an expert. If you sound like, hello, today I am talking about this thing I should supposed to know about, you will lose all believability. You will lose all authenticness. If you're really afraid that, what if there are these three things I really want to mention, write them on a post-it note, stick them to your monitor. Do not script anything out. It will make you sound fake. And also the microphones will pick up your paper rustling. And again, you are supposed to be the expert in this field. Experts don't need scripts. And also, if you're a guest on a podcast, listen to a lot of the previous episodes so you know what to expect. You don't want to think you're going on, the podcast version of Meet the Press and end up with Howard Stern. So you don't want to be surprised by the host. Okay, well, that's great, but you have a lot of things to say. You want to be in charge of your branding. You want to be in charge. You want to be a thought leader. You want to be the one interviewing other people. Excellent. Perfect reason to start your own podcast. What you need to know first. Starting a podcast is like starting another business. You are going to need a plan, both business and marketing, which, yay, SCORE, the perfect place to get help with a business and a marketing plan. You're going to need a budget. Even if you do everything yourself, there are going to be some costs. And most importantly, you're going to need the bandwidth. If you're already running your own business, do you have the time and mental energy it will take to pretty much start a whole nother business? So that is something you definitely need to think about when it comes to starting your own podcast. Questions to ask yourself. Why? It's similar. Why do you want to start your own business? Why do you want to do a podcast? Who is your audience? And most importantly, why would they want to listen or watch your podcast? What value are you offering? And pretty important, what do you want them to do once they've watched or listened? Do you want them to come to your store? Do you want them to hire you to do talks? Do you want them to buy your book? Do you want them to buy your services? What is your call to action? I see so many interview podcasts out there where it's just two people chatting, and I'm like, okay, that was really interesting, but no one's asked me to do anything. And how do you define success? This is really easy. It's very easy to start podcasting and do episode after episode after episode. But What are you hoping to get out of it? How do you define success? Is it, oh, I want 100,000 followers? Well, yeah, you can do that, but if your main goal is to generate income for your business, simply having followers isn't going to do that unless your followers do something. So, one of my most successful podcast episodes, I do a podcast for a local networking group, and they interview members of the network. And one of the people there was a cybersecurity guy, and he wanted to do a very specific topic on if you are a lawyer in New York State, this is a new cybersecurity law at the state level that will do horrible things to your law firm unless you follow this new law. Call me for more information. I have looked, that was about 4 years ago. I've looked on YouTube to see how many people have watched that episode. It was 125. Now, most people going, oh God, that's a failure. Only 125 people saw that. But it was the right 125 people because that guy has generated $4.5 million worth of business from that one 25-minute podcast. So, how do you define success? That's really important going in to think about that. Because what you're competing against, audio podcasts, they're currently 4.4 million audio podcasts and 100 new ones every day, and 114 million YouTube channels, not videos. There's over 1 billion videos, but there's 114 million YouTube channels. That is what you're competing against. Remember, I said, why do you want to do a podcast and who is going to listen to it? Because nowadays, simply saying, I have a podcast or I have a YouTube channel isn't enough. You're going to have to market the hell out of your podcast. So, what equipment do you need? It's really going to depend. Are you going to do an audio only podcast? There's still some out there. Video only. Sometimes you just want to do a YouTube show. But a lot of them now are combined because some people are driving. They're not going to watch a video when they're driving, but they can listen. And so all of the podcasts I do are combined. So for audio equipment, the Bethel Business Podcast, the first podcast I ever did, that was my podcast recording studio. That was me standing there interviewing people with my phone in between us going, so what's it like running a bookstore? How do you compete against Amazon? That's a cheap way to do it. Maybe not the best. I go back and listen to those old podcasts and I kind of cringe over the audio quality, but it's a way to start. You can also get a basic podcast microphone like a Blue Yeti. It just plugs into the side of your computer. You can go full bore and get multiple microphones and a soundboard and a portable recording device if you're going interviewing people outside. But you're also going to have to learn how to edit audio as well. There are some audio things on your phone. I'm old enough to think editing audio or video on my phone makes me cross-eyed, but there's a lot of programs that you can use as well. For video equipment, going back to the phone, a lot of people use their phone for interviews. A lot of them also use the higher end video cameras, which give you a little more control, but you also have to worry about lighting. You have to worry about your background. A lot of people record virtually. That's what I do. Some people use Zoom, but it doesn't have the greatest audio and video quality. I use Riverside FM, which has much better quality, similar to Zencaster. And if you really want to go live, StreamYard is kind of the industry standard going live. But again, if you're not going live, if you're recording, you're going to have to learn how to edit video as well. Most of my podcasts are video podcasts now. They could simply be two people having a conversation. It could be multiple people having a panel. Panel discussions are a great way to get a lot of interesting things going quickly. But even if you do an audio podcast, you are going to want to have a video aspect to it because YouTube is the second largest search engine after Google. Who owns YouTube? So even if you're thinking audio only, you're going to want to have something on YouTube. One Medicine Podcast is an audio only podcast. What I do is I create a slide and then just add some sound waves.
So
So
that you get
something's
some
moving.
symptom relief, but you're not really healing the body as well as you would otherwise.
And so there's something moving on the video, even if people just have it running in the background. So you always want to have a video component, even if you're planning an audio only podcast. So we talked about ways that you can use sales and podcasts as a sales and marketing tool. Advertising and sponsorship is a very direct way, but if you are a guest and you have your own podcast, you can still use those as a sales and marketing tool as long as you have a plan. So one of the first ways is education. I'm originally from Long Island. We had a store called Sims, and their ad was, "Where an educated consumer is our best customer." So education is a great way to go in deep into aspects of your products or services. Now, in that same networking group I do, Leo sells insurance, and he's done multiple episodes. He did everything you need to know about renters insurance, homeowners insurance, auto insurance, flood insurance. And all of this information is also on his website. So when people go to his website to look for, I think I need flood insurance, they can listen to or watch the podcast, get all the basics. So when they call Leo, they're educated enough in the basics, so now Leo can talk them through their exact needs. And one of the things you can do with audio and video podcasts is create teasers. Now, this is a teaser I created for Leo on one aspect of renters insurance.
My brother-in-law lived in Manhattan. The building had a fire in an apartment near his, not even his. But because of the water damage from the fire department, he wasn't able to stay in his apartment. Trying to find another apartment in Manhattan is very difficult, especially the kind of apartment he had. So the insurance company ended up paying 8 months to stay in the Marriott downtown plus parking. Now, here's where I say it's invaluable. His policy costs $150 a year.
Now, we use this particular one. This one is Square. We use this one on LinkedIn. We also have ones that's the vertical that he uses on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram Reels, on TikTok, on Facebook. So you can use a lot of this way to get that information out. Podcasts are also great for branding. It is making people remember who you are and what makes you special. For another networking group, this one based up in Boston, I interviewed Barry, who's a photographer. Well, great, there's 250 million photographers out there. His brand is he makes headshots fun for people who hate getting their picture taken.
Most people would rather have root canal than have their headshot taken, right? I do a number of things to help them relax. And I'm also teaching them how to pose and literally how to smile, how to...
So again, Barry uses this as a marketing tool. Thought leadership. This is, you want to be known as an expert in your field, the one that everyone goes for help and advice. My client, Donna, who is up in Connecticut, she has a very specific niche. She does direct marketing for industrial manufacturers. And she was saying when we first started her podcast, like, I don't want 1,000 subscribers because there's not 1,000 people who are my goal. There are 500 people that I want to look to me as an expert. And that's exactly what we did in her podcast. And we did about 30 or 40 episodes. And she's like, I'm not sure if we're really reaching the right people. And then she went to a trade show and got swarmed by people going, "Oh my God, I love your podcast. We have to set up a time to talk. This is fantastic." She came back to me like, "I have fans. This is great." And so she's been doing podcasts now for 5 years and she's loving every minute of it.
Influencer marketing. That's only for B2C, right? My guest today is going to destroy that myth. And then he is going to give us 6 tips.
Another way you can use a podcast as a tool is for business development. If you hate cold calling as opposed to saying, "Hey, give me money," it's the, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast?" You can invite current clients, your vendors, potential clients, interview them on the show, showcase their specialty. You're giving them value and you're getting valuable information. My client, Daryl, who's up in New Hampshire, he owns a web and IT company. He does clients, potential clients, and vendors as guests on his podcast. By interviewing his vendors, he gives potential clients the ability to say, wow, this guy's really connected. He can really fix all my needs.
I've been a web developer for 25 years, and occasionally I have a client who comes to me and says, I need the website to be HIPAA compliant. What does that mean?
In our world, what it means is, how does HIPAA impact the website? If we actually decompose HIPAA and look at the aspects of HIPAA and where the impact is on a website, everything goes back to PHI, protected health information.
And finally, as you can see from these examples here, you can generate so much marketing content with every episode of a podcast. Even if you're on as a guest, you can still use these tools. You've got the long form video on YouTube. Like I said, you want your content on YouTube, world's second largest search engine. You want it on there. Also, once you put that long form video from YouTube onto your website, Google Analytics, Google loves when you put a Google product on a web page, so your SEO goes up. This is true even if you're a guest. Take a link from the podcast that you're on, add that link, add that video to your own website. That will up your SEO. You can use these short clips like I was showing you for every episode for social media marketing on TikTok, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. And you have a 30-minute podcast, that's going to give you a bunch of 30-second clips that you can use. And don't forget about the transcript. People still read. A regular 30-minute podcast can generate anywhere between 10 to 30,000 words of content. That's a book chapter, that's an article. Cut that up for blog posts, newsletters, and social media blurbs. Try to imagine how many tweets you can get out of 30,000 words. And then again, you want to put all of this on your website. One of my clients who has their own podcast, it has a landing page for every episode. Here's the video. Here are other episodes. Here are the show notes. Here's the transcript. And they do this once a week. Their Google Analytics are going through the roof because not only do they have Google videos on here, but you got 30, 40,000 words of fresh content on your website every week. And it's going to make it a lot easier for people who are searching to find you. So takeaways here. Podcasts, both audio and video, are growing exponentially and expected additional growth. It is an incredible way to find the specific people you're looking to sell to. You can advertise or sponsor on existing podcasts if you don't have the time or bandwidth to run your own or be a guest on other people's. You can be a guest. You can ask guests, the podcast producer, when you're a guest, can I get a transcript? Can I get some teasers? They would be thrilled because you are advertising their podcast. And the reason they want you as a guest not only is because your expertise, but they're hoping that your network, the people that you know who are going to watch your podcast because you're on it, will subscribe to their podcast. So most producers will be thrilled to give you anything that will help advertise their podcast. And if you have the time, if you have the budget, if you have the bandwidth, you can take control and start your own podcast. But whatever you do, whether it's ad or sponsorships, being a guest or doing your own podcast, don't just throw it in like, yeah, let's try it. You need a strategic plan. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what are you hoping to get out of it? And what's your timeline? How long are you giving yourself to reach that goal? Now, a little about my client. Like I said, I offer a consulting package. Some people hire me because they want to do it themselves, and I can talk their way through it. Some just saying, Merrill, I just want to show up and talk. You do everything else. And we can do that. But most of my clients, they just hire me as a producer. They do some stuff, I do some stuff, and we split the work. And with that, if you have any questions, I would be thrilled to answer them at this time. And thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you very, very much, Merrill, for the outstanding presentation. We've got plenty of time for questions. And the way we'd like to do the questions today is put the questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll take them one after another. So put the questions into Q&A. That's the best way of getting us the information to talk to Merrill. Before we get started on the Q&As from our audience, could you just go through what, if somebody on this webinar is listening to you, and they have not done a podcast, what are the initial 2 or 3 steps that they should think about and take? How do you get started in going through the thinking process about whether a podcast is the right vehicle for your marketing?
Well, again, that's where the why comes in. What do you hope to get out of the podcast? If you're just doing it because everybody's doing it, well, starting a podcast can be a lot of fun. It is also a lot of work. So you need to pretty much figure out a business plan. It's the why am I doing this? Who am I targeting? How am I going to target them? Why are they going to listen or watch my podcast as opposed to the billion of other videos and audio files out there? What is going to make them come to me? And again, what's your definition of success? So many people think starting a podcast is like, oh, I want to get 1,000 subscribers. And like I said, my most popular podcast only had 125 views to it, and the guy made $4.4 million. I have a Donna who does the podcast for industrial manufacturers. She called me in a panic when she hit 1,000 subscribers and YouTube started putting ads in her podcast. She's like, I don't want ads, and this is I want complete control. So I had to go into YouTube and demonetize her podcast because that's not what she wanted. So you have to determine what you want out of it. And sometimes a podcast isn't the fastest, easiest way to get what you want. I had one guy call and said, oh, I've been doing sales training for years and I want to start a podcast so I can teach people how to sell. And I was thinking, well, what do you want people to do? Do you want them to hire you? It's like, yeah, it's like, okay, then that's probably not the fastest way to do this. Have you ever thought about doing an online course? Because that way people will pay to watch your videos. And then if they want to hire you, they'll call. Podcast, you're just kind of giving away the information for free and hoping someone will call. So it really depends on what you're looking for, because there's a lot of things out there. Podcast may not be the best way. It may be the best way, but it's not the only way. So if you're thinking, I'm going to spend all my marketing budget doing this one thing, oh no, don't. I 30 years in corporate marketing. I can even talk to you about other marketing things that you may want to do, but yeah, eggs, baskets, don't.
Excellent. We've got a lot of questions coming in, so let's start to get through them. Question number 1, what is the ideal length of an episode?
There is no such thing. I mean, nowadays people are either watching 5 to 15-second TikToks or they're, downloading 13 hours of Games of Thrones. As long as you're interesting and engaging, people will watch, people will listen. One of the YouTube channels I follow is a guy who fixes watches. Literally, it's an hour of him going, and now I'm going to take off this wheel, and oh, look, this spring. And he's got almost 6 million followers. So there really isn't a perfect length. The traditional length is a half an hour because podcasts started as something that people would listen to on a commute. One of the hockey podcasts I listen to is 2.5 hours twice a week. One of the podcasts I remember listening to back in the early days, back in like 2005, was a dentist. He released twice a day, 2 minutes long, because that's how long he wanted you to brush your teeth. Turn on the podcast, start brushing your teeth, don't stop until the podcast ended. So there is no perfect time. As long as you're interesting and engaging, just keep going. If you're doing daily, you can do a little shorter. If you're doing once a month, you can be a little longer. But again, as long as you're interesting, you can go on as long as one of the podcasts I have a friend doing, it's 6 hours every episode because they're recording their D&D campaigns. And they have people listening through the entire thing.
All right, from 30 minutes to 6 hours, a wide range. Our next question is what is your opinion of doing a LinkedIn live show versus a podcast? What are the pros and cons of doing one or the other?
LinkedIn Live is great if you're comfortable doing live. If you are a comfortable speaker that you're not worried about the cat walking across the screen or sneezing fits or talking to someone who is not comfortable and is sitting there with a deer in the headlight look trying to read from a script. So no, they're fine, especially if you record it because it's functionally a podcast. Now, it won't work as a podcast because one thing that's good with an audio video podcast is you can save it as a podcast, which generates what's called an RSS feed that you upload to a podcast hosting site. I use, there's several out there. And what that does is creates what's called an RSS feed, which is a real simple syndication feed. And that one feed goes out to all the audio podcast hosts. That goes to iTunes and Spotify and Amazon and Audible and YouTube Music. And so you only have to upload an audio file in one place and all the audio podcatchers pick it up. You can also take your YouTube Live and upload it to YouTube. You can do that as well. But again, this is something that you want to use as a tool. It's not just, hey, we did a recording, post it up to YouTube, we're done. Again, you've got the transcript. You can break it up into the small video teasers. So yeah, you can do both. Donna, who does the podcast, she does LinkedIn Live once a week. It's just another way to put yourself out there.
Excellent. Let's go back to recommendations in terms of platforms. So we have a question on what platform is good for audio and video both. And then we have another one in terms of what is the best platform to use if you're doing it on your own computer.
Okay, for video, YouTube. It's short, sweet, straight to the point. Any videos you do needs to be put on YouTube. For audio, there's a number of different ways. There are a few free ways that you sign up, you talk into your phone, you do a little AI for editing, and then the company you signed up with will send out the RSS feed. The thing you always have to remember is if you're not paying anything, you're not the client, you're the product. Because a lot of free places will automatically put ads on your podcast and keep the money. So that is something you're going to have to be aware of. And really, there is no best that determines what's best for you. For recording video, I use Riverside because I like the fact that it's got very high definition audio and video, and I can be speaking to 5 people and I get different tracks for everything. If you use Zoom, you're going to get one track for both. So if one guy's having a coughing fit, you lose the audio for everything. But again, it really depends on your budget, what you want to do, how technical you want to get. And there is no best, there's just best for you.
Excellent. How do you go about being a speaker or an interviewee on other related business podcasts?
That's being a guest on a podcast, and that was similar. You do it by start doing it. Make sure you have something interesting to say. Again, no one's going to want you on their podcast if you're going to do a half an hour sales pitch on why you're wonderful and why you're product. What do you have to teach? What is something interesting that a potential client will go, huh, I never knew that. That person obviously knows what they're doing. I'm going to reach out to them. That's why, like Leo, insurance. He's not talking about why you need insurance. He's talking about this is everything you didn't know about renter's insurance. Yeah, renter's insurance, $150 a year, and your house burns down, the house you're in burns down or whatnot. Insurance will put you up in a 4-star hotel where you're looking for a new place to live. I mean, I used to have renter's insurance. I didn't know any of this. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And another cool thing about renter's insurance, if you rent and your kid goes to college and wants to be somewhere in the dorms, that renter's insurance can cover your kid's stuff in the dorm. So if someone steals your kid's computer, your renter's insurance covers it. I knew none of this. And nowhere in Leo's talk did he talk about why you should use him for P&C insurance or whatnot. It was all pure education. And that's what it made so valuable. So if you want to be a guest on other people's podcasts, what of value do you have to teach? What of value do you want to share with a potential audience? And don't even mention anything remotely having anything to do with sales. Contact me for more information until literally the last 2 minutes. Because again, people watch and listen to podcasts for education and entertainment. If you're not either, just don't.
Okay, just don't. Next question. What are your thoughts on OBS Studio?
I don't use it. I have seen it and I've heard a lot of good things about it. Again, there's new things out there every day. I was just speaking to another podcast producer and like, oh, I use this program. I'm like, oh, okay, another new one. I'm taking notes. I'm like, I've never heard of this one. It's something new. So I can't give you any input into that because I've never used it. I have used a couple of other things. I usually go back to Riverside because it's very easy and it's very easy for my clients to use too because it looks like Zoom. It just does a hell of a lot more than Zoom.
Can you further discuss the monetization benefits or drawbacks of podcasts?
Well, again, most of my clients use podcasts as a marketing tool. And if anyone subscribes, hey, added benefit. None of them want ads on their podcast. And the one podcast that I do that has a sponsor is for a nonprofit looking to explain what the nonprofit does and help train other people in similar nonprofits on how they work. But there are a lot of podcasts out there that are looking to monetize. Again, it's tough. One podcast I know that they're making about $30,000 a month off their podcast. It took them 10 years of recording every single day. So it can be done, but again, you're going to have to put in the work and you're going to have to tell people there's a lot of marketing going on. You can't just have a podcast like, okay, first episode's up, and just sit back and wait for all the views. Y'all know better than that. So it can be done. Sponsorship is usually a slightly faster way to start monetizing your podcast. But yeah, until you at least get 1,000 subscribers, ads aren't really going to be a thing. And again, you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket because, YouTube sometimes changes the algorithm. They've recently done that. They recently changed something. So some people that were making a couple of $1,000s a month off of advertising lost thousands and are making like a few $100s now, if anything. And you're putting someone else in control. And sometimes you can't help it because, like I said, yeah, you need to be on YouTube, but if you're relying on YouTube to make a living, it's pretty risky.
Thank you very much, Merrill. Are there any other questions out there? We'll let a couple of final questions come in before we bring today's session to a close. Any closing comments, Merrill, before I kind of wrap things up for everyone?
Well, like I said, podcasts are not for everyone, but they're really fun. I mean, if you a little nervous about starting a business podcast, start a fun podcast. Find a cheap and easy way to like, hey, I'm going to get my friends together and we're going to talk about Star Trek, or let's talk about our favorite hockey team, or hey, this is a podcast all about my cat. You never know what's going to click out there. Like I said, the guy who fixes watches and quietly in a monotone, okay, and I'm going to remove the spring now. He's got 6 million followers. Admittedly, most of the comments are like, I put you on every night before I go to bed. You're great. So you never know where lightning is going to strike. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. It is a great way for branding. It is a great way for thought leadership. It is a great way to educate. That's one of the main reasons I got into doing these podcasts because I'm a storyteller. And people tend to shut out anytime they think they're being sold to. That's why people fast forward through the ads, and I have YouTube Premium. I don't get YouTube ads anymore. It's great because, yeah, as a marketer, my job is to teach other marketers how to avoid people like me, because I will go out of my way to avoid ads. I've got ad blockers and all these things on my computer, so I never have to see an ad. But if you want to tell me a good story, I'll be willing to listen. And you really engage me, I'll be willing to spend some money with you. So that's what podcasts are great for. It is great for storytelling. So ask yourself, if you want to start your own podcast, what are the stories I want to share? If you want to be a guest on other people's podcasts, what story am I bringing to this podcast that will engage that audience?
Thank you very, very much, Merrill, for the outstanding webinar that you presented today.
Mhm.
As a reminder, a recording of this webinar and any materials will be available within a couple of days on the fairfieldcounty.score.org website. Merrill has also put her contact information out on the screen. Please check our website for information on upcoming webinars. Again, SCORE offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. We are available for sessions via phone, email, or video. You will be receiving evaluations at the end of this webinar. Please take a moment and fill them out. It allows us to make our content on webinars very responsive to what you need. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's SCORE Live workshop. And in closing, a big thank you to Merrill for presenting today. That concludes our session. Thank you all very, very much.